Well, good morning. Happy Father's Day. I'm so glad you decided to join us for worship here on Father's Day, especially to you dads in the room. Good job. Bringing your family to church with you on Father's Day. There's a lot of places you could be, and so bringing your family with you to be with God's people and hearing His Word is the greatest thing you can do. And so congratulations, you're doing a great job, right? Just keep sowing those seeds, investing in your family, and God's going to do incredible things with that. So at this time, we're going to open up God's Word together. Matthew chapter 5 is where we are, looking at verses 21 through 26. I'm going to begin reading verse 21. This is what God's Word has to say to us this morning. Jesus says in verse 21, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says 'you fool' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you've paid the last penny." I think it'd be accurate to say that we live in an age of anger. People just seem really angry these days. In fact, according to a 2019 Watson Health survey, 84% of Americans said they were angrier than before. That's 2019. So a lot has happened since 2019. And in 2024, another survey was done that reported that 64% of people think society is becoming angrier. Okay? And so I think most of us would look around and we go, man, yeah, there's a lot of anger going on all around me in this world. I mean, you go online, you make the really bad decision to click on the comments section of literally anything online, and you're bound to see people just going at it, tearing each other down, calling each other names, all sorts of things, right? You drive on any freeway in Southern California, and you're going to see a lot of interesting hand gestures, and maybe even some things more severe than that, right? People often around us are angry. I mean, you just think politically, relationally, in so many ways, we see anger all around us. And we also know that each one of us, even that are in this room, at different varying degrees, we see a lot of anger in our personal lives, even coming out of us. There's a resource center in the lobby, and on the far left of that resource center, we have these little booklets from CCEF, Christian Counseling, a biblical counseling organization out of Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia. Great organization, highly recommend their literature. And so we give out for free just these little booklets. They're not meant to be a comprehensive book on any subject, but they write about all sorts of issues just to kind of get you going in the right direction. And so feel free to go and look and take something. But the topics back there range from if you're going through grief, if you're going through some struggle of some kind, right? Marriage struggles, parenting struggles, sexuality struggles, right? Anxiety, depression, all sorts of things. But it's interesting that since I've gotten here for about 4 years ago now, and we started putting those books out, Josh Harder, our pastoral assistant, he makes sure that they're stocked and keeps track of when we're out of a certain book. And it's been interesting because he's tallied over time what are the books that are taken the most. And overwhelmingly, the book that's been taken the most from that resource center is a book called Controlling Your Anger, right? And so I know, there's many of us in this room that are saying, hey, I need help with that, right? It's not just a world problem, it's a we problem. It's not just a few people in this room, though. I know there's some of you that are like, well, yeah, I'm sure there's people in our church that struggle with anger, but I don't know if I have an anger problem. David Powlison, he's no longer with us, but he taught at Westminster and CCEF and trained many biblical counselors. He experienced a lot of biblical counseling sessions himself that he led, and he said throughout his experience, he collected that information and he wrote a book called Good and Angry many years ago. And in that book, he talks about 6 common reactions that people have when they hear this statement. Hey, we all have an anger problem. We all have an anger problem. If I could be more direct to you, you have an anger problem. And when you hear that, there's often 6 sort of common responses. They should be on the screen for you. Maybe this is yours. And what he does is he gives the response and he points out a growth area or a blind spot for each one of these responses. The first response, when people hear, hey, you have an anger problem, is, yeah, I know I have an anger problem and I feel really discouraged about it. And the growth area or blind spot for people, if this is you, is that you think the goal of change in your life is just to experience the absence of anger completely. But that's not growth, per se. Another response, people say, yeah, maybe I do have an anger problem, but other people have a much bigger problem than I do. And the blind spot, if that's your reaction upon hearing something like that, is you think your problem is smaller than others, and so you'll never actually deal with the issue of anger in your life, and you're just going to drift into self-righteousness, actually. A third response is people say, no, I don't have a problem. I've got really good reasons to be angry and bitter even. And the blind spot here is that you act as if 2 wrongs make a right, and therefore you're deceiving yourself about what's actually true of yourself. He says a fourth reaction he's often seen is people who say, well, I might get angry sometimes, but I'm not really an angry person. And this is the person that when they get angry, they act as if they're surprised. Like, well, where did that come from? Right? As if an alien intruder came into your life and just left, and you're like, that was weird, right? I don't know where that came from. A fifth response is people who say, no, anger isn't a problem, it's a solution to my problems. Right? And these are the kind of people that miss the fact that sometimes the person who is being oppressed can turn into the aggressor. And you got to ask yourself the question, am I maybe right about what's wrong, but am I wrong about in my way of being right? Right? And lastly, this might be quite a few of you who are like, well, I don't have an anger problem. It's you have this reaction like, well, I hardly ever get angry. Life's pretty good. I keep problems in perspective. And the blind spot or growth area here is seeing that there are good things that you should be angry about in life. We live in a fallen world. And so you might be indifferent towards it. My point is we all have an anger problem, you guys. If you could really see it, we all have an angry problem because we live in this fallen, imperfect world where people hurt us, people wrong us, people offend us, and we do the same. And so as we saw last week, Jesus says he's come to fulfill the law, to fulfill righteousness, a righteous life, what we're calling the good life, the life that God desires you to live. And so in our passage today, what he's doing is what he told us we should do and what God is after last week, and that is he's after a deeper sort of righteousness, a heart righteousness. Exceeding righteousness is the word that he used in the passage we looked at last week. And so Jesus here, he's teaching you and I about the heart of anger. And the first thing that he is teaching us is, number one, that anger is a very serious problem in our lives. And he wants you and I to take it very seriously and not to brush it off. I'm like quoting all these books today, I apologize, but I wanted to recommend this book to you. Ed Welch wrote a little book, literally little in terms of page number and physical size. It should be on the screen for you. He wrote a book called A Small Book About a Big Problem, and it's all about anger. And I'd recommend this book to you if you're struggling or you know someone who's struggling who would actually receive the book well, you know. If you give it to them and they get angry at you, maybe you just be like, yeah, you definitely need this book. I don't know, right? But I no matter where you're at on the spectrum, if you even want to call it that of anger, this book will minister to you, okay? But it's a small book about a big problem, and Jesus is saying it is a big problem. It's a very big problem. It's a serious problem. What does he say in verse 21? You've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. And I don't think any of us would disagree with that statement. I think we'd all nod our heads, wouldn't we? Right? No, none of us want to live in a world where someone murders somebody and we go, man, you really shouldn't have done that. And you should feel really bad about it, but I hope you never do it again. Right? Nobody would want to live in a world like that, where we just kind of brush it off. Like, yeah, that was pretty serious, but, just please do better next time. Right? No, that's not how we live, right? No way. I mean, our streaming services are flooded with crime documentaries about murder, honestly. And so we watch them. I mean, people know what you want to watch. That's why there's so many of them. And we want to see people caught and judged, right, and punished. And so we see that even in our legal system. That's what we want. We want them to pay. We want them to pay in money. We want them to pay in time. In some states, they can still inflict a death penalty, that your life would even be taken from you because you've taken the life of another person. So I think we'd all agree murder is a very serious problem. Right? If you've met somebody and they're like, I murdered someone, you're like, whoa, right? I mean, that's like a serious thing, isn't it? That's a very serious problem. Do you agree with me on that? Would you debate anybody on that issue? I don't think so, right? And so the next verse, Jesus says, but I say to you, which, pause really quickly here. This is the first of 6 times in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is going to say, you've heard it said, but I say to you. I just need to explain to you what he's doing there really quickly, okay? He's not in disagreement with Moses. That's not why he's saying what he's saying. He's not in disagreement with the Old Testament. He made that point very clear last week. What he's saying is, you've heard it said, but I say to you, is he is contrasting his teaching with the teaching of the Pharisees. See, the Bible, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but in this day and age, many of the Jewish people living in this time where Jesus is speaking, they would not have known Hebrew. They would have known Aramaic. And so, the Pharisees, though, they would read the Hebrew Bible. And so you would hear the Hebrew Bible, you wouldn't even know what it said. So you would rely on the Pharisees to tell you in your language what it meant. So it'd be like living in the Middle Ages, and the Bible being read in Europe in Latin, right, in the Catholic Church, and then the priests tell you what that means. So he's saying, you've heard it said. The Pharisees have been telling you certain things about the good life, about what God is after, and they haven't got to the heart of it. They've been misrepresenting God's law. You've heard it said, you shall not murder, and if you do, you're liable to judgment. But I say to you, I'm going to clarify the heart of God's law for you. He's going to do this over and over again, okay? So here we go, back to our verse, right? You have heard it said, you shall not murder, and if anyone who murders, they're liable to judgment. Verse 22, but I say to you that everyone who, and we would expect him to say, murders someone. He doesn't say that. Everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Parallel statement to murder, right? Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. Right? This is shocking if you really take it to heart, right? I mean, do you really believe Jesus' words here? Do you actually believe what he's saying? Like, I mean, maybe you're like, well, yes, I've heard the Sermon on the Mount before. Yes, I believe his words. No, do you really believe that? Like, does your heart believe it, not just your head believe it? That if you are angry, you are liable to God's judgment. I mean, really, how many of you watch those crime documentaries, or if you're old school, like 60 Minutes or Dateline NBC, I don't even know if those things are still out there, but, right, or you read the news about someone who's murdered someone, and you read it, you watch it in horror, and what do you often think to yourself? How could anybody do that? Isn't that what you think? That's what I think. And so what I want to be clear is Jesus is not saying that our unrighteous anger is just as serious as murder. He's not saying that. He's not saying those are the same thing. No, murder has a lot more severe consequence to it, doesn't it? Right? It's serious at a different level. right? Because you just took the life of another human being made in the image of God. That is so serious, and that is therefore different than just being angry with that person. But what is he saying? He's saying if you follow the thread, if you follow the through line from the act of murder all the way down into your heart, you will find at the root of that thread is unrighteous anger every single time. Anger is the root fruit of murder. You can put it this way: anger is the acorn, and murder is the ultimate fully grown oak tree. Right? It comes from the same seed. And so he says it's very, very serious, and so therefore you and I are guilty as charged. And he goes on in this procession and saying, okay, if you're angry with your brother, you're liable to judgment. If you insult your brother or sister, you're liable to the council, which is a reference to the Sanhedrin, the highest Jewish court in the land. And then this is also an insult. Your Bible might even say the word is raka, right, which means idiot, basically. So if you ever say idiot to somebody, and then he says, whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire, literally Gehenna, which was a picture of hell. It was a burning trash heap south of Jerusalem. Now, I know you and I don't really call each other fools anymore. I mean, I don't really call anybody a fool unless I'm kind of, messing around, just having fun or something like that, right? But the word means stupid, right? The idea here is that you're insulting someone's lack of intelligence. So you must get what Jesus is doing here. He's multiplying all these examples because he's a preacher, right? He wants the hearer to feel the weight of what he's saying. He's laboring so that everybody who hears his words will understand the gravity of what he's getting at here. He's saying, you think that you are so far removed, morally speaking, from murderers. I mean, have you not hated somebody before? Have you never wished that someone else were dead? And maybe you're like, well, I would never wish someone else was dead, but I just would be glad to never see them again, and a lot of bad things happen to them the rest of their life. Maybe that's how you would say. And he's just challenging that thought, saying, how far removed are you from murder, really? Right? Jesus doesn't just say, don't call people names. He's talking about you assassinating people's character. I mean, John says in his epistle, 1 John chapter 3, we're told that anyone who hates his brother is a murderer. So that's a different apostle in a different letter. So Jesus' teaching must have been fairly prevalent enough and challenging enough that the apostles are even teaching this. So you guys, Jesus here, he is not just after your actions. He's not just dealing with the ultimate fruit of what I act upon. That's what the Pharisees focused on. He is not just dealing with your actions. Jesus is after our appetites. That's what he's getting to here in the heart of this whole sermon. And so, yeah, you might sit here and say, man, this is really extreme. This is so extreme. Can you really say that you're deserving of hell because you got angry with someone in a sinful, sort of unrighteous sort of anger? Well, I think there's a lot of things that don't seem serious to us at the point, but then at a certain moment, but then it becomes quite serious, right? Remember when we sold our first house or our main house that we had in Corvallis, Oregon in 2019. We literally got it all ready, we put it on the market, and then the very next day, I believe, I walk into my living room and I see a bunch of water on the floor, and I look up and my whole ceiling is just bubbling. The paint or drywall, I don't know, right? Something's holding back the water, barely. It's dripping through our ceiling, and we came to find out in that moment, I have a leak upstairs, right? And so we called a guy, he came out, he kind of looked for a long time to try to figure out where is this leak coming from, and he finally found it. It was just a pinhole little leak in a little tiny pipe behind our upstairs bathroom sink. He came and showed me. He even said, you can't even see it with your naked eye. He had to run his finger up and down the pipe, and then it just felt like a little breeze or something was touching his finger at one point. And he found it, and we fixed it. Right? I mean, it's pretty challenging to sell a house when you walk in and they go to your back living room and there's literally a hole in your ceiling, right, under repair. So It wasn't great timing. So this tiny little leak, it did not seem to our naked eye like that big of a deal, and yet it destroyed my ceiling and for a time affected me even being willing to sell my house. Right? There's a lot of ways this kind of stuff works in our life. And I think the reason why we don't see the seriousness of our anger problem is because it's just so prevalent around us, and so we normalize it. Other people's anger seems worse to us than our anger. Or the moment someone points out our anger, we point out theirs. And so maybe this could be helpful. Maybe this could be helpful, but just for a second here, imagine heaven with me, just for a moment. Imagine heaven with me. The place where God lives with his people and everyone's living a perfectly righteous, good life. And realize, picture it, no one will ever be angry, not even for a moment. Because there won't be any sin. So there won't be anything to be angry at. And no one will be selfish. So no one will unrighteously get angry. If you're a Christian, that's your future. Imagine a world of that kind of perfection. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Right? It sounds like a fairy tale or something. Imagine that world and then import that world into your current life. And maybe that'll help you and I begin to see our serious problem. And I'm laboring here because if you do not see how serious this problem is, you will never be able to live out what Jesus says next. You'll never do it. He tells you next, reconciliation is what God desires most. Reconciliation is God's priority in your life. If you look at me in verse 23, Jesus transports us to a worship thing, a worship setting. If you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. He's saying, I want you to imagine, he's talking to his Jewish audience here, you're at the Jewish temple doing an act of worship. You're offering a gift of some kind. Now, we have a hard time imagining this. I think the clearest parallel for us today as Christians would be taking communion, taking the Lord's Supper together, right, which we do as a church once a month. And he's saying, imagine you're about to take the Lord's Supper, and as every Christian should do, that we should examine our hearts. We're told the Bible tells us to do this. Examine your heart. Right? Is there anything you need to confess? Is there anyone you need to reconcile with before you do this? Why do we emphasize that? Because when you take the Lord's Supper, you're remembering that Jesus shed his own blood and had his body broken for you at the cross. And the reason he did that was to unite you to God, but not just unite you to God, unite you to other believers. And so if I'm going to take this meal that symbolizes my union with God and my unity with other believers, then I need to maybe refrain from taking that until I get right with this other person who's also a Christian. I thought that would be, top of mind parallel. But you could import a lot of other ideas here. I mean, it could just be any act of worship in your mind, maybe singing songs or being a part of a worship gathering, giving of money, leading a Bible study, just doing anything that would be for God as an act of worship. And he says, if you're doing an act of worship and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and go. And here's the key word of the entire passage. First, be reconciled. Then go and offer your gift. First, then. Right? First, then. It's not that God doesn't care about these acts of worship. He's telling you the priority. Right? First, be reconciled. This is a command. It's a command. And so, Jesus, therefore, is not saying, when he says be reconciled, he's not running something by us to consider. He's not suggesting anything. He's not giving us something to chew on. He's not giving us advice to contemplate. It's as if Jesus is gently but firmly pointing his divine finger in our chest and saying, go make things right. Go make things right. He says, literally, stop your act of worship. Go and make things right. This is the priority. I mean, here's the very un-American thing Jesus is saying, you guys. Most of us subconsciously believe that we can be out of alignment horizontally with other people and be vertically okay with God. We often live our lives that way, and he is taking a sledgehammer to that idea, saying, just stop. Stop your act of worship. Go get right with others. If you're not right with them, we're not right. Right? Now, I get it, it's not fun. But it's going to lead you into the good life if you actually receive Jesus' command here. I get it, it's not fun. Who wants to go have a conversation with someone and say, yeah, that thing that I did that I feel really embarrassed about, I'm sorry. But as much as it depends on me, I want to be right with you. I want to be reconciled with you. I don't know how many people are like looking at their to-do list for the day, being like, can't wait to do that one, right? I mean, we don't get a ton of legitimate mail anymore in our physical mailbox. And I think in our house, the only kind we ever get that's legitimate mail is either a bill and once in a while a check, right? And I'm just being honest with you. If I see a check come in the mail, I'm going to be quick to open it up because I want to know how much it is, and I'm going to be very quick to go deposit it. Like, I want that. I want that kind of mail, right? But if I get a bill, I'm going to be a little bit slower to open it up because I don't really want to face the facts, and then I'm going to be a little bit slower to actually want to pay it, right? That's not what I want to do. Okay, anybody else with me? Am I the only person? Right? I'm quick to cash a check. I'm slow to pay a bill. But I'll pay my bill on time. Okay, I just want you to know that, right? Do you ever feel that way? Right? But man, when I finally pay the bill, the burden's off. I got it done. That's what I needed to do. Jesus is saying, go pay the bill. Do the hard thing. You got angry at someone. Go and make it right. That's at the very heart of God for you. It's what he wants. It's why he said what? Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. Peacemaking is shining your light. Peacemaking is preserving your saltiness, right? Initiate, right? Don't ignore. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't just move on. Don't act as if everything's okay now, right? As much as it depends on you, which leads to the final movement and scene of the passage. It talks about the urgency of doing this. Jesus is not leaving us here with an option to say, okay, someday I'll do it, right? The point of today, you guys, is not that if you know there's someone who could accuse you of mistreating them or being unrighteously angry at them in some way, the point is not for you to go, I'll do it someday, right? No, not at all. He says today, point number 3, today is always the day to be motivated to make things right. Today is always the day. Verse 25, we're now transported from a worship center to a courtroom. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you've paid the last penny. So here's what Jesus is doing here. He's using an earthly courtroom scene to tell you about the eternal courtroom scene. That's what he means in verse 26. Right? This is what gives the urgency. Come to terms quickly, not slowly, not the pace that feels comfortable to you. Quickly with your accuser. The accuser, someone who would say, yeah, you messed up. Right? You should not have treated me that way. Right? Anybody who could accuse you of unrighteous anger, Do this while you're going with them on the way to court. So Jesus is saying what? Settle with them outside of court because you're guilty. So if you make it to the courtroom and you don't settle before you get to the courtroom, they're going to turn you over to the judge, and the judge is going to look at the case, and he's going to say, well, of course, yeah, you need to pay for this. Right? You were in the wrong. And then the judge is going to hand you to the guard, and you're going to be put into prison, and you will never get out until you pay the last penny. And so what Jesus is saying here is not that the debt is going to be like $10. He's using this to talk about an eternal sense of judgment. Right? That I would be guilty before God. This would be like trying to pay off $1 trillion debt, making minimum wage. Right? It's just never going to happen if I make it to the end. And I wait till that courtroom. Now, making minimum wage, paying off $1 trillion debt, I actually did some research, meaning I asked AI, how long this would take. It'd be 1.2 million lifetimes just for that amount. And I just made up the numbers, you guys, right? I can't pay. I can't pay that. I can't pay that. And so he's giving you some motivation here. Do this because you will have to pay off your debt in judgment. So settle before that day. We have an option here. You could settle your debts before you stand before the judge, or you can settle your debts when you stand before the judge. If you make it to the courtroom of heaven, which all of us will, we'll pay our debts. So what's our motivation? Well, what's interesting is if you read this passage, you and I might walk away with a sense of, man, I want to reconcile, I want to repent, I want to be forgiven, I want to pursue reconciliation because I don't want to go to hell. I mean, that's literally how we could read that. And I'm not saying the Bible never gives that as any sense of motivation for us. It does, clearly, right? But if you are a Christian, you now have an even more profound motivation than that. Because yes, if you are not a Christian and you just keep shrugging it off, and everyone you've ever mistreated your whole life, you're like, just moving on, I'll find somebody else. And then you stand before God and he calls the collector. You're going to pay for all the ways you've mistreated people. Yeah, your result will be eternity separated from God forever, where all you will know is anger, basically. But if you're a Christian and you've settled before you got to court, right? That means now you have a completely different motivation in your life. Our motivation is not because I don't want to go to hell. It's because the man on the mountain, Jesus Christ, has already come and made peace between me and God. That he came so that I could have my debt settled before I made it to court. And he went to a cross and he paid it all. And he now functions as my mediator. Jesus has reconciled me to God outside of court. That is my story. And so now, do you see your motivation? A Christian who holds a grudge truly is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. A Christian who holds a grudge is the epitome of moral hypocrisy, because if anyone has the right to hold a grudge, it would be God. I mean, God has never had a need to go to someone and say, I'm really sorry. I lost my cool. He's never had to do that in his entire life, and he never will. Yet, God, in his great mercy and grace, he sent Jesus into the world to die for all of my anger, for all of your anger, and all our words that we've spoken to tear others down, and all the times that we've lashed out in rage, and all the times that we silently wished someone were dead. All the times we said things we shouldn't say, all the times we did things we shouldn't do, all the times we lost control, flew off the handle, blew off some steam. Or maybe you're like, that's not my version of anger, right? For all the times you silently shut down and gave everybody else the cold shoulder. Right? Some of us get angry with big emotions, some of us get angry with great violence. But some of you are silent assassins, aren't you? Right? Something happens and you're just going to pull away for a while, a long while. I'm busy. Life's getting hectic. Oh man, that person goes to first service. I'm going to start going to second service, right? Right? That's a form of murder, Jesus is saying, because in that instance, you've just murdered the relationship instead of dealing with it. You've put a pillowcase over the relationship and just let it suffocate and die. But yet, your story is that Jesus died for our sin so that we would trust in his exceeding righteousness and be forgiven. Before we ever got to the courtroom of heaven, he settled the debt we owed with us and paid for it himself. And so here's the principle, you guys. Here's the principle. If you get nothing else, get this. The clearest witness of what we truly believe about the gospel is seen in how we treat people who've mistreated us. If I really want to know what you believe about the gospel, if you really want to know what I believe about the gospel, what we believe about what Jesus did at the cross for us, I don't necessarily need to hear you say one word. Right? I just need to watch how you react to people who've wronged you. And so it's been blowing my mind all week just to think of this precious thought that Jesus obeyed this perfectly. And last week he said, I came to fulfill the law, and he did it. He didn't just not murder somebody. He never had this kind of anger in his heart. He never assassinated someone's character, which he taught us, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so we might often say in our anger, man, look what you made me do. Have you ever said that? I've said that. You made me angry. But that's just not true. You do anger. That's you, right? It's not an alien invasion, right? Anger doesn't do you, right? The heat is just getting turned up, and what's inside of you is coming out of you, isn't it? Right? Just like I love a great sauna. I love saunas, you guys. I love saunas. And so when the heat gets turned up, what's going to come out of you? What's inside of you? You're going to sweat every single time. I do not care how much you get into a sauna and set your mind to the fact that you're not going to sweat, right? Mind over matter is not a thing in a sauna, right? Just, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. No, it's coming, right? You're going to sweat, right? Right? You'll sweat. In the same way, you will not stop being angry unrighteously by trying to not be angry. If you leave here today and you're like, I'm just going to do better, right? I'm just going to try to not be angry anymore. That's not going to fix anything. The problem is your heart, which is what makes Jesus so amazing, that he lived his entire life and he went to a cross and was bruised and beaten and nailed to it and spat upon, yet he was the one who made all of these people doing this to him. And he never once acted out in contrariness to what he's saying here. It's amazing how differently the gospel will motivate us versus punishment. I mean, the difference is then what? I want to go and make things right. Why? Because I've been reconciled to God. There's a peace in my heart now between me and God, and he has treated me in a way that I've never deserved. Not in 1,000 lifetimes of doing more good deeds. He's treated me in a way that'll overwhelm your heart with peace, and that'll make your heart say, man, let's make this right today. And so the question is, who do you need to settle with today? Not someday, today. Who do you need to settle with today? Let's pray.